Share via email. Report story. By Grosselmeyer. Mom, I'm. Izuku turns around to look at his mother, one last time for a long while, he thinks, but he consequently found himself at a loss for words when she had looked at him with teary eyes and a half smile. Letting a sigh escape his lips and letting his bag drop to the floor, Izuku made his way to his mother and gave her a quick and tight hug. I'll come visit whenever I can. He smiled brightly at her, trying his best not to cry with her at that moment when she finally broke down into tears. It's not like I'll be gone forever. I know. Inko nodded her head slowly, wiping away tears from her eyes as she took a deep breath. I know. Planting a kiss on her forehead and wiping away a tear of his own, Izuku made his way towards the door and took his bag and slung the straps onto his shoulders. I'm going now, Mom. Aizawa's warning message to the students who rescued Katsuki hovered hauntingly over their whole class. Thankfully, however, that feeling was quickly dispelled when Katsuki had decided to forcefully activate Denki's quirk, rendering the poor boy brain dead for the next few minutes or so. The normal cheery behavior returned to the class as soon as Eijiro proposed to buy barbecue for the class, with Mina and Toru excitedly giving their suggestions to him. Agreement to hold the barbecue party at a later date was decided, and the class decided that they were going to have to get their rooms ready and appropriate enough, since they'd be living there for a good 2 to 3 years or so. Izuku heard commotion outside of his room when he had just finished aligning the last All Might figurine that he had brought from home on the shelf that was nearest to his bed. Apparently, his classmates were holding a who had the best looking room competition, which made Izuku rather happy to show his classmates his collection of All Might paraphernalia. His rather extensive collection of All Might paraphernalia. Before he could even manage to clear up his room a little, the girls had imposed themselves upon his room and everyone from his class set their eyes upon the glory known as All Might, namely, his merchandise. Needless to say, he was expecting looks of disgust and remarks of utter distaste, but his classmates seemed to find his unnecessary obsession over All Might to be rather endearing, something that he understood to be what defined him as an individual amongst his peers. As his classmates went on their way towards the next victim's room, Izuku turned to look at his own and a small smile crept up his lips when he had noticed how much bigger this room was compared to his room back home. The word, home, left a bitter taste in his mouth, and images of his crying mother flashed through his mind's eye in quick succession. Izuku bit at his lower lip and calmed himself down before he had erupted into a hot mess of tears and snot. It was going to be fine, he was going to get used to living here. It wasn't like he was completely alone, he thought, as his classmates came into mind. Where do you plan on going after graduating? Izuku blinked his eyes a few times at the sudden inquiry, lowering his eyes in contemplation at the mug of tea that he was just about to drink from. He had forgotten that they were graduating in a few months' time. He was about to speak up when he was cut off from his words. Promoted stories. You'll also like. Izuku's Harem Academia 180K 1.7 Qst. Read. The hero who sings with a smile 37.2K 361 high. Guys, this is my first story I write on Wattpad. I hope you like it. I am. Sequel of UR checkmark 69.4K 1.8K this. Book is the sequel of UR, so better read that first before going here. Tears of joy, tears of joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. Convicted Hearts 3030 like my other story but ILI longer. Son of All for 1767K 12.6K this is a fanfic of extremely op Izuku. I do not own BNHA. Much needed love Yandere Succubus Momo X Izu, 49.4K 756 after Wattpad. Had decided to delete this story out of nowhere, I and many reader were distraught. So I'm making a remake of the story from the ground up to compensate. Not all heroes wear capes. Some just have 8.42.1K 1.4 kilo. Everybody. This is a suicidal, depressed Deku book with Dadmic. Will their bond grow? Will Mike fuck up? Will Izuku try to kill himself? Find out yourself. Number 1 Radio. Me. Well, I suppose I'll just kick back and relax at home or something. Denki shrugged as he wolfed down a whole piece of sausage. It's not like there's a shortage of heroes or anything. Kaminari. That is very complacent of you. Tenya shook his head as he slapped the back of his right hand on the palm of his left. We have been studying and cultivating ourselves for 3 years for the very reason of enlisting as heroes. Shoto snickered as he drank his coffee. To be honest, though, that's very much like you, Kaminari. Chuckling when Denki had started protesting about how he wasn't that lazy and that he could live however he wanted, Shoto cleared his throat. To answer your question, Uraraka, I suppose I'll work for a while in my father's office. Shoto shrugged, which earned him a few looks of confusion. But, didn't you want to make your own office? Ochako raised an eyebrow curiously, holding her mug with both of her hands as she anticipated Shoto's response. Yes, I do, adjusting himself on his seat with a sigh. Shoto smiled wryly. I'm not going to be successful in doing so unless I make a name for myself. We all have to start from somewhere, I suppose. I suppose. Izuku unconsciously spoke up with a shrug, but you're already pretty popular around the media with the whole League of Villains dissolution thing that happened last year. Shoto smiled and shook his head. You were the star of that show, Midoriya. Placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder, Shoto nodded his head. I'm sure All Might would be proud. The mood dampened at the mention of All Might. Just a month and a half after Izuku and some of his classmates had managed to incapacitate Tamura, All Might had finally passed on from his long overdue injuries. Izuku felt his heart rend, but found no tears at his eyes. Live, be happy and smile. Midoriya, my boy, promise me that this will be the last time that you will ever shed a tear. Oh, I'm sorry. Everyone was snapped out from their stupor of All Might when Shoto had suddenly spoke up. I didn't intend to bring down the mood especially this early in the morning. PSH, it's cool, bro. Denki smiled as he wiped away a small tear from the corner of his eye. Man, I was hoping to see Deku cry again after hearing you mention that. It feels like he hasn't wept a single tear all these years, you know. Izuku smiled wryly at the remark and laughed a bit. Crying was just a release valve for all my stress from before. I mean, it's not like I'm not feeling stressed anymore, it's just. We understand, Midoriya. Tenya smiled as he nodded his head. There's no need to justify yourself for when you cry yourself to sleep at night. Why yeah. Izuku furrowed his brows when he finally understood Tenya's words. Wait, no I don't. Laughter was exchanged between the friends and Izuku was the first to speak up after a small comfortable silence fell upon the group. I suppose I'm going to go live at Hosu. Izuku started his explanation. It's quite near to Sir Night-Eye's office and Gran Torino's place. Plus the train is pretty convenient for the times I decide to visit my mom. Izuku shrugged. What about you, Uraraka? Ochako blinked her eyes a few times and smiled absent-mindedly for a few seconds. Huh. Oh, me. She laughed. I'm still thinking about it. Funny that you should ask as if you still hadn't an idea yourself. Denki snickered. Pretty ironic, you know. I was hoping I'd get a better view of my future plans if I had your guys' input. Okay. Ochako fumed, to which Denki replied with a laugh. As their conversation slowly drifted off to other work unrelated stuff, Izuku couldn't help but replay All Might's words in his head, making his resolve to save people stronger than ever before. Dash 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 dot. We could. You know. Ochako bit at her lower lip as she drew circles on the ground with her feet. Maybe, live together. She spoke in almost a whisper and Izuku had to replay her voice for a few more times in his head to make sure that he wasn't hallucinating. What? He spluttered out, completely surprised at Ochako's suggestion, but also completely elated about the notion of living under one roof with Ochako for an extensive period of time. It wasn't long before their graduation, and he's already decided on renting an apartment at Hosu. A few weeks prior, Ochako had also told him and Tenya about her plans of staying in Hosu. He wasn't expecting something like this, though. I mean, if it's okay with you, you know. She laughed nervously as she started stammering and explaining in clauses. If it isn't too weird of a suggestion, yeah. Plus, we could save cost on rent and. I'd love to. Izuku beamed. I mean, I know how you still send your parents money to support them and I'd like to help you out as a friend, you know. The moment the word, friend, left Izuku's lips, Ochako's smile fell and she felt her heart sink. She didn't understand why, but that word just didn't sound and feel right to her. She managed to regain her composure a split second later, however. Yeah. Thanks. I owe you one, Deku. He smiled at her and laughed a bit. Don't mention it. Dash 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 dot. Good morning, Deku. Ochako beamed, turning off the stove that she was using and placing the pan full of scrambled eggs on their quaint dining table. Izuku waved at her and stifled a yawn. G-morning. He smiled, taking his usual seat and blinking his eyes a few times as they started adjusting to the morning light. Placing a plate in front of him and pushing half of the scrambled eggs on it, Ochako furrowed her brows a bit. How was the job last night? Tiring. Izuku turned to look at her with a groggy smile. Good thing Bubble Girl was there for support, or else I'd have been up all night trying to catch that criminal. Well, you should rest up plenty for today, Ochako crooned, opening their fridge and pouring Izuku a glass of water. You don't have to go to Sir Night Eye's office today, right? Izuku mumbled and absent-mindedly started scooping small portions of scrambled eggs into his mouth. Need to Sir's pretty meticulous when it comes to formal papers and such. Placing the glass beside Izuku's plate, Ochako took of her apron and sat across from him. Darn. That's right. She furrowed her brows, playing with her chopsticks before eating from the pan straight out. Oh, I have an idea. Ochako beamed, which slightly caught Izuku off guard. How about I just take the papers from him later on the way back home and you could fill them up here at home? Izuku furrowed his brows. Well, I'm sure Sir wouldn't mind me taking them home. He shook his head. But I highly doubt he'd allow you, an outsider, to handle rather confidential paperwork. Ochako snorted. Oh, please, Deku. I'm pretty persuasive, you know. Plus if he doesn't allow me, I could just ask Tagata for a favor and let him deliver the papers to you. Izuku smiled wryly. That's thoughtful of you, Uraraka, but I'd rather not impose on you and Mirio. You look like you'd keel over from exhaustion. Ochako had suddenly brought her face close to his, which effectively made Izuku yelp out in surprise. See. Even your reactions are pretty dull compared to normal. Oh okay. Fine, he nodded his head in defeat. Izuku knew that Ochako was hard to dissuade at times like these. Thank you, Uraraka. Ochako blinked a few times and felt her cheeks heat up. Don't mention it. She beamed. Izuku smiled back, content at this domestic feel of his home. Their home. What do you mean he escaped? Night Eye furrowed his brows. I don't care if it's just recently. Give me the full details already. All right, I see. Understood. Tamura Shigaraki has escaped. Night Eye went straight to the point, and gave Izuku and Mirio no time for inquiries when he had continued his explanation. Apparently, he's yet to cause any mayhem, but I suspect that he will be soon. Shall we go on a full-scale search for him, sir? Izuku furrowed his brows, feeling his stomach twist at the thought of facing Tamura again. But he needed to. He was the reason Tamura was so vengeful, so malevolent. If he had just managed to reach out to Tamura on the time of their decisive battle, things would have been different right now. That won't be necessary. Night Eye raised an arm to stop Izuku from speaking. I have a fairly good idea where he might be. Tagata, go and take Bubble Girl and Centipeter with you and incapacitate Shigaraki. Turning to Izuku, Night Eye furrowed his brows. You are dismissed. Izuku frowned and he shook his head. But, sir, I need to. Dismissed. Night Eye bellowed, which was something he rarely did. Relax at home. We will handle this. Blinking his eyes a few times in disbelief, Izuku sighed. Yes, sir. What do you mean you're going after Shigaraki? Ochako frowned. That's crazy, Deku. Izuku tried his best to ignore Ochako's protest, picturing every single scenario in his head that might happen once he finally confronts Tamura again. Deku! She screamed, snapping him out of his thoughts and effectively making him turn to look at her in surprise. I'm scared, Deku, she sniffled, her hands rubbing at her eyes as she tried to contain her sobbing. You don't know what he'd do to you if you two see each other again. Why you might not be able to persuade him. Or he could have some other villains lying in wait. She tore her hands away from her eyes to stare at him with conviction. Eyes bloodshot and tears streaming down her usually adorable cheeks, she looked at him with a resolve to persuade him to abandon this plan of his. Ochako. He let himself slip and called her out by her name, but he hadn't noticed and neither did she, mainly because of the fact that she managed to cut him off from his justification with an outburst. You don't get it. Deku. She felt her lips quaver as more tears fell from her eyes. He could kill you. Stomping one foot on the ground, Ochako covered her face with her hands again. I don't want to lose you. Izuku furrowed his brows as his shoulders slumped. He slowly made himself towards Ochako and placed his hands on her trembling shoulders. Uraraka. I'm going to be fine. Gently pushing her hands away and wiping away her tears, he smiled reassuringly at her. It's not like I'll be going in alone, you know. Tagata and Bubble Girl and Centipeter will be right behind me when I get to Shigaraki. Brushing away strands of her hair on her face, Izuku shook his head. There's nothing to be worried about. I love you, okay. She bit at her lower lip with a hiccup. I know you're capable of handling Shigaraki yourself, and I know you've gotten stronger all these years. Clutching onto his shirt and burying her face into his chest, Ochako shook her head. But there's still a chance that he'd get lucky and manage to kill you. I don't want that to happen, Deku. Patting her head and combing back her hair, Izuku felt his heart rend at her words. He was sure that he had fallen for her a few years back, but he didn't want to act on it for fear of rejection and awkwardness between them. The fact that she does reciprocate his feelings further reinforces his need to take Tamura down once and for all, be it through words or through violence. Please don't go, Deku. Please, she wept in his chest, feeling her heart fall apart when Izuku had pushed her away slowly. I'm sorry, Ochako. He smiled wistfully at her, making his way to the door to their apartment as Ochako watched on with disbelief and horror. But I can't run away from this. I need to do this. I'm sorry. He smiled at her, opening the door and closing it behind him, getting a glimpse of Ochako falling to the ground below her and managing to hear her loud crying from behind the closed door. Pocketing his hands inside of his pants, Izuku suddenly remembered when he had said goodbye to his mother all those years ago. That time, he promised to visit her, and he kept that promise. Trying his best to visit her on holidays and whenever he was free. This time, however, he made no promise to Ochako, because he feared that he wouldn't be able to fulfill it. All he could do was apologize to her. Feeling his eyes tear up as he descended down the stairs, Izuku covered his face with one of his hands, weeping bitterly as he continuously apologized to All Might for breaking his promise to him. Dash 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 dot. Ochako had shut herself in for a few days since he left, before Suyu had come personally to check up on her, concerned that her friend and coworker wasn't going to the office on her work days. Suyu would come over many times to check up on her thereafter, making sure that she was at least getting some sleep and eating properly. In a few months' time, Ochako was already working again, albeit in a rather sloppy manner. And, instead of reprimanding her, her superior had opted to give her a paid leave, to mull over her thoughts and hopefully get her act together. Ochako heard no news about Tamura's capture or the like, and as each day passed, she feared for the worst of what had happened to Izuku. Tenya had started coming over along with Suyu, trying his best to cheer Ochako up and keeping her company whenever Suyu was unavailable. Ochako appreciated their company, but ultimately felt emptier and emptier inside as each day passed, making her condition worse and worse. Until, one day, Inko Midoriya decided to pay her a visit. Oh, Uraraka. Inko beamed and instantly furrowed her brows when she had noticed how unkempt Ochako looked. This isn't a bad time, is it? Ochako furrowed her brows at the sight of Izuku's mother and quickly shook her head with a smile. Oh. Certainly not. Please come in. Oh, my, it's quite messier in here since I last visited. Inko looked around the place a bit incredulously. I hope Izuku hasn't been too imposing on you. The mention of his name made Ochako's stomach turn and she did her best not to cry in front of Inko right then and there. Oh. Not at all. Really. I'm glad to hear that. Inko beamed again, placing the thing that she had brought along onto their quaint dining table. I was shopping here at Hosu the other day and I suddenly remembered that Izuku was living here with you. Well, I fixed something up and decided that I'd bring it over today. Looking around, Inko furrowed her brows slightly. Speaking of Izuku, where is he? Ochako bit at her lower lip. He's at work right now. Oh, Inko sighed in disbelief. Well, I suppose I'll just catch him later, then. Making her way towards the door and waving at Ochako, Inko smiled. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask, all right, dear. Ochako nodded her head and smiled forlornly at Inko. Why yeah, thank you. Her eyes widened in surprise when Inko had suddenly wrapped her arms around her neck, giving Ochako a quick hug. Thank you so much for taking care of my Izuku for me. Inko smiled, a hint of sadness apparent in her eyes. As Ochako was left alone again, she felt something bud from inside of her. Instead of breaking into tears, she found none in her eyes and instead felt this fire being relit from her core. She was going to keep on fighting. To keep on believing that Izuku was safe and okay and that he was doing his best to survive for her. This was not for her sake. or for Inko's sake, for that matter, but also for his. It's been over a year and a half since Izuku had left to pursue Tamura. Recent news has stated that Tamura had just been captured by the Night Eye office, and Ochako couldn't believe it. Overjoyed, she made her way to said office and inquired about Izuku's whereabouts, only to be completely disappointed when they state that they hadn't seen Izuku for the past year or so. Around 2 months have already passed since Tamura's incarceration, and Ochako has yet to receive any solid information about where Izuku currently was. She would make it a habit to swing by the Night Eye office every time after work to check if they had a lead on Izuku, only to always leave empty-handed every single time. She started feeling depressed again like the year prior when Izuku first left, and tried her best to stay on the positive side of things, always thinking of Inko and her sincerity from that one time she saved Ochako from the darkness. But a person can only hope for so long. 2 years, 3 months and a week after Izuku had left, Ochako had started to give up on the notion of Izuku still being alive. She's already past denial and is slowly starting to accept the grim fact that Izuku, the man that she still loves to this day, is no longer on the mortal plane like her. Ochako speculated as to what caused his death so many times, and has asked Mirio and Bubble Girl on numerous occasions as to what may have occurred, only for them to either shake their heads at her or simply look away distraught. Looking for closure, she's reluctantly started preparing an altar for him, getting up early today so as to buy all the materials that she needed. Preparing to leave, she was surprised to hear a knock on her door, confused as to who was visiting her so early in the morning. Hello, who is? Ochako's eyes widened in disbelief as she saw Izuku, slightly taller, had messier hair and clothes and had a ghost of a beard on his chin. Deku. She covered her mouth in surprise, feeling her knees tremble as her eyes started watering up. Deku, is that you? Izuku smiled at her but made no attempt to move from the doorway. His smile turned wry and he quickly looked away and rubbed at the back of his head. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I went away for so long and that I didn't manage to contact you at all. His face fell and he sighed. I understand if you don't want me in your life anymore, but I just felt the need to apologize, especially since I've been so afraid of coming back all this time. And you idiot, she cried out, tears streaming down her face as she pummeled his chest with her balled up fists. You don't know how worried I was. How worried Suyu was. How worried Iida was. How worried Todoroki was. She continued to list out the name of their friends as she cried in his chest, almost reminiscent of that time he left her 2 years ago. Even your mother. Ochako sniffled and looked up at Izuku, who was stunned at the mention of Inko. She was in shock when I told her you left around a year ago, but she never stopped believing you were alive. His lips quavered and Izuku suddenly wrapped his arms around Ochako before starting to weep bitterly. I'm so sorry. I was so afraid that I. Ochako's eyes widened at the sudden contact and she started crying with him, stopping only a few seconds later as she laughed and started wiping away the tears from her eyes. Parting strands of hair away from Izuku's eyes, she got on her tiptoes to kiss him on the forehead. It's okay, she sniffled and hiccuped. You're home now. Her words pierced Izuku's heart and he could no longer hold in all of the pent-up frustration that he was feeling, crying and sobbing loudly in her arms as she combed back his hair whilst shushing him gently. Laughing as he embraced her tighter, Izuku reveled in her warmth as he felt years of stress and fear expel from the very core of his body. Yeah. He sniffled, returning the kiss she placed on his forehead in kind. I'm home. Where stories live. Discover now.